The first rays of dawn stretched across the small fishing village of Bantian Cebu, painting the sea in soft gold. The tide whispered against the shore, and the scent of salt and fish filled the air. In a modest bamboo hut by the water, 10-year-old Miguel Santos stirred awake to the sound of his mother humming, the same lullaby she'd sung to him since he was a baby. He blinked his sleepy eyes open and smiled. There was no alarm clock, no buzzing of city life, just the song of waves, the distant clatter of fishing boats, and the familiar warmth of home. Their hut, though humble, carried love in every corner. Patched curtains fluttered with the morning wind, and the walls were adorned with simple drawings Miguel had made of his family. His mother, himself, and his late father Papa Ernesto holding a fishing net and smiling. Miguel, his mother called softly from the kitchen corner, where she crouched over a small kerosene stove. "Anak, wake up, we have to sell early today, the fish market will be full." Miguel sat up and rubbed his eyes, the sound of his mother's voice filling him with comfort. She was his world, strong, kind, and endlessly patient. He could see the tiredness in her eyes, the fine lines that came from years of carrying baskets and worry. Still, she always smiled at him as if life had given her everything she needed. "Coming, Mama," Miguel replied, slipping into a faded white shirt that hung loose on his thin frame. As he stepped outside, the rising sun cast long shadows over the beach. Fishermen shouted greetings, and boats bobbed on the gentle waves. Miguel joined his mother, who was packing freshly caught fish into a basket lined with banana leaves. "Can I help carry, Mama?" he asked, eager as always. She smiled and nodded. "Of course, you have strong arms like your papa." At the mention of his father, Miguel's heart squeezed softly. His papa had died 2 years ago during a storm at sea, the same sea that now shimmered so beautifully. Ernesto had been a fisherman, just like most men in the village, but he'd been more than that. He'd been a dreamer. He used to sit on the beach at night with his guitar, singing to Miguel about hope, courage, and kindness. Miguel still remembered his father's last words before one fateful fishing trip: "Your voice is a gift, Anak. Use it to lift others when they can't lift themselves." Those words had never left him. Now, as Miguel and his mother walked to the market, he hummed a tune his father had taught him. It was, "You Raise Me Up," though he didn't know its title then. He only knew how it made people stop and listen. At the market, the air buzzed with life. Vendors calling out prices, children running barefoot, and roosters crowing from baskets. Miguel and his mother found their usual spot near the bridge. She began laying out fish on a wooden table, while Miguel's eyes caught sight of a small group of tourists nearby. They were taking photos of the harbor, smiling as they passed the locals. "Mama," he said shyly, "can I sing while we sell?" She glanced at him lovingly. "Only if you remember what you're singing for." "I will," he said, "for Papa." And with that, Miguel began to sing. At first, his voice was soft, almost shy, but it carried through the noise like a warm breeze. People turned, the chatter of the market slowly quieted. His voice was small, yes, but pure. The kind of sound that seemed to come from a place untouched by the world's cruelty. "You raise me up so I can stand on mountains." A fisherman paused mid-step. A vendor set down her weighing scale. Even the tourists turned, phones now forgotten. Miguel closed his eyes, singing with all the feeling in his heart. When he finished, silence hung in the air for a beat. Then came applause, soft at first, then louder. A woman from another stall came over and placed a few coins in front of him. That voice, "Hijo, it's like heaven itself." Miguel blushed, smiling. "Salamat po," he whispered. As he looked up at the sky, he felt a strange stirring inside, as if his father were watching, smiling down at him. Later that evening, after the day's earnings were counted, Miguel and his mother walked home under the pink glow of sunset. He carried the empty basket while she hummed beside him. They were tired but happy. When they reached home, Miguel ran inside and took out a small, battered phone, a gift from their neighbor, Tito Raymond, who always said Miguel's singing was blessing from heaven. He handed Miguel a big grin and said, "Let's record you, boy. The world needs to hear that voice." They set the phone on a chair, facing Miguel as he stood barefoot on the sand. The waves behind him shimmered in the fading light. His mother watched from the doorway, pride shining in her eyes. Miguel began to sing again. "You Raise Me Up," the song that connected him to his father. He sang not for fame, not for money, but for the memory of love that still lived in their small home. When he finished, Tito Raymond uploaded the video to Facebook with the caption, "This boy from Cebu sings straight from the heart. Watch until the end, you'll feel it too." Miguel didn't think much of it. He went to bed, tired but content, dreaming of his father's laughter. But miles away, across cities and seas, something extraordinary was beginning to happen. By morning the video had been shared thousands of times. People commented from America, Europe, and Australia. "Who is this angelic boy?" one wrote. "This child needs to be on America's Got Talent," said another. Miguel's mother was shocked when her phone began buzzing nonstop. Reporters wanted interviews. A local news channel wanted to meet them. But the message that changed everything came a few days later, in an email from Los Angeles. Dear Miguel Santos, we are moved by your story and your voice. We would love to invite you to audition for America's Got Talent 2025. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Miguel read it 3 times, his hands trembling. Mama, they want me in America. Tears welled up in her eyes. Your papa was right, she whispered, clutching his face in her hands. Your voice is a gift, and now, the world will finally hear it. As the night breeze swept through the hut, Miguel looked up at the stars, whispering a quiet prayer. Papa, I'll make you proud. And somewhere, carried by the wind and the waves, it felt as though the sea whispered back, a soft fatherly, you already have Anak. The morning after the email arrived, Miguel's home was filled with a kind of electricity that no storm could rival. The air buzzed with whispers and laughter as neighbors crowded around the Santos, a small hut, peering over shoulders to see the message on Miguel's mother's cracked old phone. America's Got Talent, said one fisherman, his eyes wide.
That's the big show.
The one where they press the golden thing and all the gold rain falls down. Yes, Miguel replied, grinning so wide his cheeks hurt. They invited me. The crowd erupted in cheers. Children clapped, old women prayed aloud, and someone shouted, Cebu will be on TV. For the first time since his father's death, the entire village felt alive with hope, not just for Miguel, but for themselves. Still, as the excitement settled, a quiet worry crossed Miguel's mother's face. She held the phone close to her chest. But Anak, we have no money for tickets. The words fell like a shadow over the joy. Miguel looked down at his bare feet, his dream suddenly feeling far away again. But before despair could take root, an elderly man from the crowd stepped forward. Mang Pedro, the village's oldest fisherman. His back was bent, his hands rough from years of work, yet his eyes glimmered with pride. Let's not let money stop the boy, he said firmly. We'll all help. That one sentence lit a fire in everyone's hearts. Within hours, the village moved as one. Fishermen decided to donate a portion of their day's catch. The market vendors promised to give tips from their sales. A local teacher started a small donation box labeled for Miguel's dream. Even children began collecting coins in old jars. By evening, the small community had raised just enough for a flight to Manila, a visa application, and a single ticket to Los Angeles. Miguel's mother insisted on selling her wedding ring too, though Miguel begged her not to. She smiled and said, "This ring gave me love once, now it'll give you a future." The day of their departure came quickly. The sun had not yet risen when half the village gathered at the Cebu pier to see them off. Miguel wore his cleanest shirt, a plain white one his mother had washed twice, and carried a small backpack filled with everything he owned: a few shirts, a toothbrush, a photo of his father, and the old rosary he never let go of. His mother held his hand tightly as they boarded the ferry to Manila. Tears filled her eyes when she looked back at their neighbors waving from the dock, holding banners made from cardboard, "Go Miguel," and "Make Cebu Proud." The ferry hummed to life, and as it pulled away, Miguel pressed his face to the railing, watching the people grow smaller until they became part of the horizon. He whispered, "I'll come back, Mama. I'll bring something beautiful for everyone." Manila. The city was everything Miguel had imagined: loud, colorful, and alive. Skyscrapers replaced palm trees and cars honked like impatient birds. He had never seen so many lights or so many people moving so fast. Inside the U.S. Embassy, Miguel sat nervously beside his mother, clutching the folder of papers: invitation letter, passport, and visa forms. His legs swung above the floor, too short to touch it. When the interviewer called their names, Miguel's heart raced like a drum. Purpose of travel? The officer asked. To sing, Miguel said softly, his voice trembling. For America's Got Talent. The officer smiled, raising an eyebrow. Really, that's quite something. He stamped the passport and said, "Make the Philippines proud, young man." The sound of that stamp, thud, was the sound of destiny sealing itself. The airport, Manila Ninoy Aquino International Airport, was vast and gleaming. Miguel clung to his mother's hand as they walked through security, wide-eyed at everything: the escalators, the shops, the airplanes that looked like giant silver birds ready to take off into the sky. His mother placed her hand on his shoulder. "Are you scared?" He looked up and smiled. "Maybe a little, but Papa said dreams don't grow where fear lives." She chuckled softly, brushing his hair back. He was right. When the boarding announcement echoed through the speakers, "Flight 103 to Los Angeles now boarding," Miguel's heart leaped. They walked down the jet bridge, the hum of the airplane filling his ears. It was the first time he had ever flown. He sat by the window, pressing his face to the glass as the plane began to move. His mother reached into her bag and handed him something: his father's rosary. "Keep this with you," she said. "It'll remind you that your father is traveling with you." As the engines roared and the ground began to shrink, Miguel whispered a prayer. The sea below glimmered like a mirror. Somewhere in that endless blue he felt his father's spirit. The flight, Hours passed, but Miguel hardly noticed. He gazed at the clouds, imagining himself singing above them. Flight attendants passed by, smiling at him when they learned why he was traveling. One of them even gave him a small set of headphones and said, "Practice your songs, superstar." Miguel blushed and nodded. He looked out at the vast sky and began humming quietly. The soft melody of "You Raise Me Up" filled the tiny bubble of his seat, his voice trembling but determined. His mother listened, tears glistening in her eyes. "That's the same voice your father fell in love with," she whispered. Miguel smiled, still looking out the window. "Maybe Papa can hear me up here." Los Angeles. When they landed, the world seemed to explode into color and movement. Miguel's first breath of American air felt surreal, cool and crisp, full of promise. The airport was enormous, filled with signs and faces from every corner of the world. He stared at the automatic doors that led outside. Beyond them, the dream began. They were met by a cheerful Filipino volunteer from the AGT production team holding a signs, "Welcome Miguel Santos." Miguel's mother bowed politely, overwhelmed. "Thank you, sir, we are so grateful." The man laughed warmly. "No need for that. You're our star now." He led them to a waiting car. As the city skyline of Los Angeles came into view, tall buildings shimmering under the sun, Miguel couldn't stop smiling. Everything looked like it came straight from a movie. Wide roads, palm trees. They reached the hotel provided by the show, a simple but clean place near the studio. When Miguel opened the door to his room, he gasped. Soft white beds, air conditioning, and a view of the city below. He ran to the window, eyes wide. "Mama, look! So many lights! They look like stars that came down to Earth!" His mother hugged him from behind. "Those lights are waiting for you, Anak. Tomorrow you'll shine brighter than all of them." That night, Miguel couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding his father's rosary, whispering softly, "Papa, I'm here, in America, just like you said I would be if I never gave up." Outside, the hum of the city faded into silence. The moonlight touched his face, and for a moment, he imagined his father sitting beside him, the same gentle smile, the same reassuring eyes. He closed his eyes and sang quietly to himself. The sound was pure and trembling, carried softly into the night. Tomorrow he would walk onto one of the biggest stages in the world. Tomorrow the world would finally hear the boy from Cebu. The day had finally come. The sun was just beginning to rise over Los Angeles, painting the skyline in soft hues of orange and pink. From the small hotel room window, Miguel Santos could see the world awakening. Cars gliding through the streets, people hurrying to work, the city alive with dreams. He stood quietly holding the rosary his father had once worn around his neck, whispering the same prayer he said every morning back home in Cebu. "Please, Papa," he murmured, "give me strength, help me sing with my heart." Behind him, his mother gently fixed the collar of his white shirt. "You look handsome, Anak," she said with a proud smile. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her nerves. "Just remember, it's not about winning, it's about sharing your gift." Miguel nodded. "Yes, Mama, I'll make them feel what I feel when I sing." A knock came at the door. "AG Transport," called a cheerful voice. They stepped outside, greeted by a van with the America's Got Talent logo printed on its side. Miguel's small hands clutched his mother's as they climbed in. The ride to the studio felt like a dream. Billboards flashed past, fans lined up outside, and the AT building towered like a palace of light and color. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Crew members hurried about, contestants warmed up their acts, dancers stretching, magicians shuffling cards, singers practicing scales. Miguel looked around, eyes wide, taking it all in. A kind producer named Lara crouched down to his level. "Miguel, we're so excited you're here. You'll be performing third today. Are you ready?" Miguel bit his lip but nodded. "A little nervous." "That's okay," she said warmly. "Even the best get nervous. Just remember, sing like you're back home by the sea." Her words made him smile. Home. The word carried him back to the sound of waves and his father's laughter. Backstage, the air was electric. The audience could be heard through the curtain. 1,000 murmurs blending into one heartbeat. The judges' names echoed in Miguel's mind: Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara, Howie Mandel. He had seen them only on TV before, larger than life. Now they were just beyond that curtain. As he peeked out, he saw the stage glowing under bright lights, the big AGT logo shining above it like a star. He could barely breathe. "Miguel Santos," a stagehand whispered, signaling him forward. His mother squeezed his shoulders gently. "Remember, Anak," she said softly, "this stage is big, but your heart is bigger. Sing with love." He took a deep breath, kissed the rosary, and stepped into the light. The lights hit him all at once, brilliant, blinding, almost surreal. The audience was a blur of faces, stretching into the dark beyond. The cameras turned toward him, capturing every nervous blink, every tremor in his small hands. Simon Cowell leaned forward on the judge's table, his familiar expression unreadable. "Hello there," he said. "What's your name?" "Miguel Santos," the boy replied, voice trembling slightly. "How old are you, Miguel?" Simon asked. 10 years old, sir." Simon smiled faintly. 10, wow. "And where are you from?" "I'm from the Philippines, from Cebu." The crowd cheered, some waving small flags. Simon nodded. "Cebu, huh? That's far away. What brings you here?" "Miguel." The boy hesitated, then said softly, "I came here to sing for my papa. He passed away, but he always told me that music could make people feel less alone, so that's why I sing for him." The audience fell silent, even the judges exchanged glances. Simon's tone softened. "That's a beautiful reason. What are you going to sing for us today?" Miguel looked up, eyes glistening. "A song called You Raise Me Up. It's my papa's favorite." Simon nodded. "Good choice. All right, Miguel, the stage is yours." The music began. Soft piano notes floated through the hall, gentle and familiar. Miguel closed his eyes and took one long breath. The moment his voice emerged, something shifted in the room. "When I am down, and oh my soul so weary." The first line was tender, trembling, but true. His tone carried a purity that silenced the whispers, stilled the restless crowd. His mother stood backstage with her hands clasped tightly, tears already welling in her eyes. Miguel's voice grew stronger with every word. The melody wrapped around the room, touching hearts in places words could not reach. People leaned forward captivated. His small frame seemed to vanish into the music, only the sound remained, full of love and longing. As he sang the chorus, "You raise me up so I can stand on mountains." The audience rose to their feet. The judges watched spellbound. Heidi pressed her hand over her heart. Sophia's eyes shimmered with tears, and even Simon's stern expression began to melt into something rare, genuine awe. Miguel reached the final note, his voice breaking slightly, raw and human. The piano faded, leaving a silence so profound it felt holy. Then an explosion of applause. The audience erupted, cheering, whistling, clapping. Some were crying. His mother backstage sobbed openly, whispering, "Thank you, Lord, thank you." Simon stood slowly, his eyes glistening under the lights. When the noise finally calmed, Simon leaned toward his microphone. His voice, steady but filled with emotion, broke the silence. "Miguel," he said, "I've judged this show for a long time. I've seen thousands of singers come and go. But what you just did." He paused, taking a breath. "That wasn't just singing, that was feeling. That was truth." The crowd roared again. Miguel covered his mouth, trying not to cry. Sofia Vergara spoke next, her voice gentle. "You remind us why we love this show. It's not about fame or money. It's about stories like yours. You came here with nothing but heart, and you gave us everything." Heidi added, "You made everyone in this room feel something real. That's the kind of magic we don't forget." Miguel's small body shook as tears rolled down his cheeks. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you so much." Simon leaned back, smiling faintly. "I think your papa would be very, very proud right now." The boy looked up, eyes shining. "I hope so, sir." The crowd stood once again, chanting his name. "Miguel, Miguel!" Backstage, his mother could barely contain her emotions. She watched as her son, the little boy from a small fishing village in Cebu, stood on one of the biggest stages in the world, his heart wide open for all to see. She whispered softly to herself, "You did it, Anak. You did it." But what none of them knew yet, what not even Miguel could have imagined, was that the night was far from over. Because in just a few moments, the man who had built his reputation on being the toughest critic in the world was about to do something he rarely ever did. Simon Cowell was about to stand up, walk forward and change Miguel's life forever. The applause still echoed like waves long after Miguel's last note had faded. The AGT stage, moments ago a place of fear and trembling, now shimmered with the electricity of something extraordinary. 10-year-old Miguel Santos stood at the center of it all, his small chest rising and falling, his hands clasped tightly before him. He could feel his heart pounding in his ears. The golden lights above seemed to blur with the tears that filled his eyes. From backstage, his mother watched in disbelief. She pressed both hands to her mouth, trying to steady her breath. This was her son, the boy who once sang to comfort himself when hunger came at night, now standing before thousands, embraced by applause instead of silence. The camera zoomed in on Miguel's trembling smile. Simon Cowell was the first to speak again. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes fixed on the boy as if trying to memorize him. His voice came softer than usual, almost a whisper. "Miguel, when you walked out, I didn't know what to expect. You're tiny, you're shy, but the second you started singing, something inside this entire room changed." The crowd quieted, hanging on his words. "You reminded us what music is supposed to do. It's not about being perfect, it's about being real. And you, my boy, are as real as it gets." A murmur of emotion rippled through the audience. Miguel blinked back tears, his lower lip quivering. He wanted to speak, but no words came out, only the weight of gratitude pressing against his chest. Heidi Klum wiped her eyes delicately. "You took us all on a journey," she said. "I forgot I was sitting here judging a show. I felt like I was listening to an angel sing." Sofia Vergara nodded, her voice breaking slightly. "You said you sing for your father, Miguel. Well, you made all of us feel like we were your family tonight." Even Howie Mandel, usually playful and comedic, leaned in seriously. I've seen adults twice, 3 times your age who can't express what you just did. What you have is a gift. The crowd erupted again, cheering, whistling, calling his name. Miguel! Miguel! He turned toward them, overwhelmed, wiping his eyes. For a moment he forgot the cameras, the lights, the millions watching. All he could think about was his father's face. The way Papa used to look at him with quiet pride after every song. Miguel whispered under his breath, "This is for you, Papa." Simon was still watching him, unmoving. Then, slowly, he stood up. The crowd gasped, the other judges glanced at each other, knowing what might come next. Simon walked toward the center of the panel, his expression unreadable, his hand hovering over the golden buzzer. The entire studio seemed to hold its breath. Miguel froze, his heart stopped. Simon looked up at him and said quietly, "You said you wanted people to feel what you feel when you sing." He smiled. The kind of smile that came only once in a great while. "Well, Miguel, we felt it." And with that, he pressed the golden buzzer. The sound hit like thunder. Boom! Golden confetti exploded from the ceiling, pouring down like a rain of dreams. The audience screamed. Rising to their feet, music swelled through the speakers, joyful and triumphant. Miguel stood there, stunned, his tiny body trembling under the golden storm. His mother backstage let out a cry, a mix of laughter and tears, as she fell to her knees, overwhelmed with joy. He looked up, mouth open, as the golden flakes landed in his hair, on his shoulders, on his hands. Time seemed to stop, every second felt infinite. Then Simon did something no one expected. He stood up, walked to the stage, and climbed the steps toward the boy. Miguel didn't know what to do. He just stared, still crying, as the man the world knew as the toughest judge reached him and knelt down. Simon placed both hands gently on the boy's shoulders. His voice, when he spoke, was thick with emotion. "Miguel, listen to me. I've been doing this show for nearly 20 years. I've heard thousands of voices, but tonight, I heard something pure. You didn't just sing, you gave hope to everyone in this room." Miguel tried to speak, but his words came out in broken whispers. "Thank you, sir. I just wanted to make my papa proud." Simon's expression softened completely. "You did, and you made us proud too." He pulled the boy into a quick, heartfelt hug as the audience cheered louder. Cameras captured the moment from every angle, the golden confetti still falling. Simon Cowell and a 10-year-old boy from Cebu locked in an embrace that would soon become one of the most replayed clips in AGT history. Sophia and Heidi joined them on stage, clapping, tears glistening in their eyes. Heidi crouched beside Miguel and said, "Do you know what this means? You're going straight to the live shows." Miguel blinked, not fully understanding, still dazed by the magic around him. His mother rushed out from backstage, unable to hold back any longer. She ran to him, wrapping him in her arms. The crowd erupted again at the sight, a mother and son, reunited in joy under falling gold. "Mama," Miguel cried, burying his face in her shoulder. She held him tightly. "Anak, you did it!" Through her tears, she looked up at Simon and mouthed, "Thank you." Simon simply nodded, his eyes misty. "You raised him right," he said softly. Backstage, as the celebration wound down and the cameras were turned off, Miguel sat quietly on a chair, still clutching a handful of golden confetti. He turned one piece between his fingers, watching it shimmer under the studio lights. His mother knelt beside him. "What are you thinking, Anak?" He smiled faintly. "That gold feels like home, like sunlight on the sea." She chuckled through her tears. "Maybe because you brought the sunshine here." Laura, the producer who had welcomed them earlier, appeared with a gentle smile. "You did something incredible today, Miguel. The world's going to know your name." He looked up, innocence still glowing in his eyes. "Can the world know about my papa too?" Lara's throat tightened. "Yes," she said softly. "They'll know." Later that night, Miguel and his mother returned to their hotel, exhausted but overjoyed. He placed the confetti pieces carefully into a small envelope, as if storing stars. Then he stood by the window, gazing out at the lights of Los Angeles. The city seemed to shimmer differently now, alive with meaning. He whispered to the night, "Papa, did you see that? They pressed the golden button for us." The air was still, but in that stillness, he felt something, a warmth, a whisper in his heart. "You raised me up too, Anak." Miguel smiled, his tears glistening like the confetti still tangled in his hair. And somewhere, across oceans and time, in a little fishing village by the sea, the waves of Cebu carried the news home, that the boy who once sang barefoot in the market had made the world listen. A week after that unforgettable night, the video of Miguel's performance went viral across the world. 10-year-old Filipino boy moves Simon Cowell to tears. The headline appeared on YouTube CN Philippines BBC. In just 48 hours it had over 100 million views. Clips of his trembling voice, Simon's rare smile, and the golden confetti raining down played endlessly across social media. Reaction videos flooded in, people crying, clapping, saying they hadn't felt something that pure in years. But in a small hotel room in Los Angeles, Miguel Santos remained the same humble boy from Cebu. He sat on the edge of the bed swinging his legs, holding a Cowell's guitar that wasn't even his. It was borrowed from a kind stagehand who heard him humming in the hallway. He played softly, his voice barely a whisper. When life is hard and nights are long, I'll keep singing Papa's song, Ka. His mother watched him quietly from across the room. She smiled through tears, thinking about how far they'd come. From the broken hut near the shore of Cebu, where rain dripped through holes in the roof, to the grandest stage in America, it still felt like a dream she might wake from at any moment. But this dream was real. 2 days later, Miguel and his mother were invited to appear on Good Morning America. The host greeted him warmly, kneeling to his height. "So Miguel," she said with a grin, "how does it feel to be the boy who made Simon Cowell emotional?" Miguel laughed shyly. I didn't mean to make him cry," he said. "I just wanted to sing for my papa." The studio audience melted. "And where is your papa?" the host asked gently. Miguel looked down for a second, then smiled. "He's in heaven now. But I think he watched me on TV." The crowd went silent, touched. His mother reached for his hand. The host's voice softened. "He's very proud of you, Miguel. We all are." That night, as they walked out of the building, strangers stopped them on the street. People hugged him, took pictures, and told him how much his song had healed their hearts. A man in a suit knelt down and said, "I lost my son last year. When you sang, I felt like he was with me again. Thank you, kiddo." Miguel didn't know what to say. He just smiled and whispered, "You're welcome, Pooh." Back in Cebu, the local community gathered in front of small televisions and phones, cheering every time his name appeared on screen. At the small chapel near the sea, the same priest who once gave Miguel free rice stood at the altar, tears streaming down his face as he watched the video replay. Children who once teased Miguel for being poor now sang his songs at school assemblies. Teachers printed his photo beside a sign that read, "Sing loud, be kind like Miguel Santos." The weeks passed and the AGT live shows began. Under the glittering lights, Miguel stood once again on the massive stage, this time with confidence burning quietly in his chest. He sang an original song titled, "Waves of Home," a tribute to the island that raised him and the father who taught him to sing. When he finished, the audience was in tears again. Heidi called him, "Miracle in Motion." Simon simply said, "You've already won, Miguel. The world is yours." Months later, when the season ended, Miguel didn't win the AGT trophy, but it didn't matter. The world had already embraced him. Record labels called. Talk shows invited him. Charities reached out to offer scholarships and a new home for his family. But Miguel's only wish was simple. He wanted to build something for others. And so, when he returned to the Philippines, he did something that surprised everyone. He didn't go to a mansion or move to the city. He went back to Cebu. It was a humid morning when the locals saw him again. A van pulled up to the small, worn-down neighborhood near the coast. Miguel stepped out, now taller, holding his guitar, his smile just as shy. His mother followed behind, carrying boxes labeled, "Miguel Santos Foundation for Kids." Children ran toward him, shouting, "Kuya Miguel! Kuya Miguel!" He knelt to greet them, handing out notebooks, crayons, and snacks. "You don't have to stop dreaming just because life is hard," he told them. "Dream harder." Behind him, workers unloaded boxes of instruments, ukuleles, guitars, tambourines. Miguel had used his earnings to open a small music center for underprivileged children. The building wasn't big, just a repainted old classroom with open windows, but when Miguel stood inside, looking at the children strumming and laughing, he whispered, "This is better than any trophy." Later that evening, he sat by the shore where he once sang barefoot as a boy. The sun was setting, painting the sea gold and pink. He held his guitar and looked out at the waves. "Papa," he whispered, "we did it. But more than that, I helped other kids sing, too." A soft wind brushed against his face, carrying the scent of salt and home. In the rhythm of the waves, he almost heard his father's voice, deep, warm, full of pride. "Keep singing and act. The world still needs your song." Miguel smiled, tears glinting in the fading light. He began to play once more, his voice rising above the tide, gentle yet strong. "From the shores of Cebu to the stars above, I'll keep singing songs of hope and love. The world may be big, the night may be long, but I'll keep shining with my papa's song." Caught the children nearby heard and joined in, their laughter mixing with the melody. The camera of a local journalist captured the moment, a young boy surrounded by children, singing to the sea, bathed in the colors of sunset. That image would soon go viral again. Title, "The Golden Boy of Cebu Returns Home," still singing. Months later, at the AGT reunion special, Simon Cowell was asked about his most unforgettable moment on the show. He didn't hesitate. "It was a boy named Miguel from the Philippines," he said. "He reminded the world that music isn't about fame, it's about heart. He changed people, including me." Back home, Miguel never stopped singing. He continued to help children through music, giving free lessons and organizing small concerts to fund food drives. Sometimes before sleeping, he'd hold the envelope filled with golden confetti from that night and whisper, "Thank you." But deep inside he knew, his true golden buzzer wasn't the button Simon pressed, it was life itself, the miracle of being heard. the chance to turn pain into song. And as the night sky glittered above Cebu, Miguel's voice echoed through the village, soft, pure and full of light, a voice that once rose from poverty now rose for hope. A boy who once sang alone was now the song of his people. And that was how Miguel Santos, the poor boy who sang for his father, became a symbol of every dream that dared to rise from the smallest shore, all the way to the world's brightest stage.